Hey everybody, Dr. John Michael Salvato. You won't find Whoopi or Rosie or Ellen here, but if you're looking for a fun, insightful, and often irreverent group of queer pagan psychics, witches, brujos, and metaphysicians who get together each week and talk about the news, talk about the current events and the brews of the day, you're going to love our show. Join the conversation. We'll be back after this. Hey, welcome back. And if you enjoy our program, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, or whatever happens to be the case where you're listening to or watching this. This, just in the interest of full disclosure, is the first attempt we're going to have to do both our podcast and our weekly video broadcast in one shot. So it might or might not work out that way. So wherever you like or subscribe or give a thumbs up, go ahead and do that. I'm really excited, guys, because today our guest is Devin Hunter, who is a professional psychic medium, a modern witch, and is the resident house medium at the Mystic Dream in Walnut Creek, California. He's the holder of a third-degree initiation in both the Northern Star tradition of Wicca, as well as the Dianic tradition of witchcraft, or the cult of Diana. Devin's the founder of the Sacred Fires tradition, host of one of my favorite podcasts, and so talking about subscribe, check out The Modern Witch if you don't do so already. His work is unquestionably such a helpful resource for people from all over the world to discover or develop or maybe even just refresh their magical abilities. Many of you know him as a blogger for Witches and Pagans magazine and the creator of Modern Witch magazine. And I believe you're currently, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, and I probably missed half a dozen things, but I think you're teaching Black Rose School of Witchcraft right now. And your first book, The Witch's Book of Power, was, or the first book that I read of yours, I'm not sure if that was your first book, was released back in 2016. And I just absolutely ate up every word of it as I was getting ready to leave a more closed environment of the craft in a hereditary magic, community, and go out into the larger community to connect with my tribe. So, Devin, we are so thrilled to have you in here. I could probably fill the whole segment on the reasons that I've got you on the show. So instead, I'll just say welcome and namaste, my brother. What did I miss in that introduction?
Nothing. It sounds like you should be the one writing my Wikipedia page.
Good. Anytime.
Yeah, no. I'm a busy guy. I love the craft. I love our wonderful queer family that we have here, and witchcraft and paganism and occultism, and anything I can do to be part of that community or support that community is what it's about. So thank you for finding time to get me on the show. I'm a big fan, and I love tuning in. This has been a treat for me, actually.
Thank you. Likewise. It seems like every one of these shows sound like we're like we've got the Mutual Admiration Society going, but that's what our community is, and that's frankly one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show. That I wanted to come out of sort of the closed community that I grew up in and love and honor, and really connect with what felt like more my tribe. And so on that note, in your book, and I've got to pull up my notes here for a minute, the Witch's Book of Power, you talk about something that I really wanted to dig into, something that really excited me, and something that I think gets overlooked by people who are trying to navigate the waters of the craft, and especially for those who are just getting started. And that's the practice of tuning into your home frequency as a witch. I think that recognition is like the difference between the sort of religious approach to worship of the divine in all of its forms, and what I consider to be the ancient craft. And so many times we miss that opportunity. Could you talk a little bit about your thoughts about what the home, maybe start out by saying what the home frequency is, what we're talking about when we say that, and why that's so important for us to begin our development of our craft?
Yeah, so in occultism, we have a kind of a set of philosophies that we tend to adhere to and agree to. And one of those things is the idea of vibration. Everything has a vibration, right? And so if we pick up a crystal, most of us instantly go to the crystal has a vibration. What is the frequency of the stone? And it's so easy to feel and work with those things in the craft. And so we tend to just talk about frequency from that kind of a perspective. But what we don't think about is, what are we emanating, right? Like, what are we putting out there? And so animism teaches us that there's an indwelling spirit in everything, and there's a vibration because of that. And so you being a being that is comprised of all of the parts that you are, you're like a singing bowl. You're just ringing all the time. And what we tend to do is, go throughout our day, and we can do all the grounding and all the cleansing we want, but we tend to go out throughout our day and, we're just picking stuff up. And we think of it like being like, like psychic burrs, right? Like they're just sticking to us and we have to kind of pull them out, and that's what the cleansing work does. But what we don't think about is, like, every time that happens, there's an internal adjustment that happens. Like if you're really passionate and excited about your job and you go have a meeting and your boss is like, you suck, you're going to leave that experience changed on the inside forever, because it's going to have an impact in that way. And so one of the things that I think is really important in the craft in general is that if, we talk about power and wanting to be a powerful person and a powerful witch, and that all comes back down to you having your stuff together, basically. And and the proof is in the taste of the pudding, as we say. And so, if you're looking at a witch and their life is great, like they look like they're paying their taxes and they've got they're paying their bills and they're comfortable and they're able to go do things. And if you look at that and you can see success, and you can see that the fruit of their magic has been, taking care of their issues, those people don't walk around, like just bleeding everywhere. Those people aren't walking around struggling with the same things that most of us tend to struggle with. And so what I tried to do in the Witch's Book of Spirits is just challenge the things that we kind of accept about who we are as people and witches, and try to reframe them so that we can get our power back from those situations. So in the case of the home frequency, the idea is that if we're able to, if we walk through the day and we're having all these little adjustments that are made, the sound of the singing bowl at the end of the day, after it's been banged up, is going to be way different from the sound of the singing bowl at the beginning of the day. And so the home frequency exercise allows us to not just get aligned so that we can be one with the spiritual energies, the physical energies, and the psychic energies that we're moving and existing within, but it actually sets us up so that we can have a consistent tone, a consistent frequency throughout the whole day. And what I found probably the coolest thing about this was the actual exercise itself. We do this thing where kind of visualize, like, well, what do you look like? What would you look like if everything was great? Like if you weren't worried and stressed out all the time, and you didn't have that weird health thing going on, like what would that look like? And then using that as a guide so that we can step into that being and that frequency, because it's got a frequency too, right? So when we go to adjust a frequency, often it's just about subtle shifts. And when we do a soul alignment, we do the home frequency work. It's a lot of subtle shifts that happen very quickly that just get us locked into place. And so it's just that idea for me, the home frequency it's the purest state of you. If we got to just your individual tone in the whole universe, that's what it sounds like, is your home frequency. And that's an important place to begin and end your day in. It's an important place to remember. That's where everything really happens, is in the now. And that's what I love about the home frequency, is if anything, it's a mindfulness. The exercise leads to a lot of mindfulness of being in the moment and being aware of where your energy is going.
I just realized something that that just makes that even more powerful, drives that point home. Right before we came on the show, I was having a discussion with some folks on one of Matt Oren's posts, and our viewers will remember Matt was on here a few weeks ago, or about a month and a half ago, I believe, And on this discussion, we were talking about working with the HGA as the Telemics would put it, and describing that. And so it was a challenge for me, as it's been for the last couple of years, to try to bridge, as an autistic witch, trying to bridge that gap between what's supposed to remain a mystery and what we're not allowed to say in public, to wanting to help people and share with people. And so I was struggling to explain what the HGA is for me, and you just unlocked that. So folks that are watching this broadcast, what I really should have said was go and get Devin's book, because your home frequency, I think, and let me know what you think about that, Devin, really is your HGA without a name. And we could have another entire discussion about, I went on to say that for us, in my tradition, Aradia is sort of the primordial true self, that the witch, the true witch's self, and how that's sort of both an archetype and real. So thanks for that, because I was really struggling going into this, thinking, I really should give them a better answer than that horrible thing I said before jumping on here. And
how do you explain the numinous? I mean, it's so hard. And when it's something like the HGA, it's so experiential. I mean, you can read all the books in the world about what it's supposed to be like, and now there's some cool Netflix movies, right? But realistically, how do you convey that to another person? You can't. I mean, I was lucky that my teachers were very just kind of kick you and you'll figure it out, get dirty. If you need me, I'm here. I'll throw you a life raft kind of a thing. And I feel bad for my students because I do that to them as well. But I'm like, there's no other way to learn how to have a psychic experience, how to have a mediumship experience with these energies, if you don't just go and figure it out, because we're all so radically different. And it's hard, but the HGA in our tradition, we look at it, I mean, it's always there. It's not something necessarily we have to go through all this muck to get out the way. But I think because we've accepted, we work with the concept of the higher soul a lot. The higher soul is the HGA. And so when we are doing our soul alignments and our work in that way, I think it's become very familiarized to us. And so one of the things that I've been missing is the grandioseness of the HGA, right? So and so one of the things I was just talking to Matt about, actually, is we need to make this happen more here, because, for us, it's just this, it's the higher self. It's the holy soul. We're going to go pull that energy down and start our day. And it's just a very different thing than what it was when I was, introduced to it. Like the walls would shake, Right. And so it's that idea, I think, of, it's the HGA tends to be this thing that we want to pretend is outside of us. And I think the whole work of the HGA teaches us that it's incredibly inside of you. It's deeply inside of you. And
right on.
And so how do you explain that, man? I mean, I think you did great.
Thanks. And if you happen to be listening to the podcast, I guess this is the point at which they will insert a break. So we'll pretend that there's a break in here right now, because I want to dive into the next question. So let me just go ahead and give a second for the editors to do their magic. And that should be good enough. An important part, I think, Devin, for coming into our own power and really getting comfortable in who we are as witches, I think it includes manifesting inner awareness of our sovereignty. And that's one of the things you talk about in the book, one of the books as well. So how has your own personal path, which is, remarkable in and of itself, it should serve as both evidence and inspiration to young witches, coming into their own. But it seems to me, as I watch what you and your partners do, that there is an undeniable intersectionality, if you will, between your tradition as well as the Black Rose tradition, and say a metaphysical celebration of queerness and the sacred feminine. Would you agree? And what could you tell us about how you got to that point in your path?
I totally agree. And it's a big story. It's a long story. We were talking. Now I take pride in being able to actually share the story, because it was a really hard experience. But I was a little psychic kid, and I was really lucky in that my family was just like super Midwestern spiritual. So, we had the Indian great grandmother and, all of that stuff. And so, the idea of me being a medium and talking to angels, that was the language I had at the time, talking to angels or talking to a spirit, it just wasn't like out of the realm of possibility for my family. So instead of them saying, "Oh, don't talk about that," it was, "Hey, what does that feel like? What does that look like?" And I count, to this day, my mother's, Christian, and we still have these conversations, and I'm very grateful for them because I realized it's not the case everywhere. So I got lucky, and I didn't realize that until I got older, and I was like, holy crap, this could have gone a very different way. But I was alone a lot when I was a kid. And so, because my parents were divorced, parents worked a lot, so and luckily I didn't get into too much trouble. The trouble I got into was all witchy related. And so, I had developed this relationship really early on with the goddess Diana. She was one of the first, goddesses that I was introduced to. And I'll also say, so my first book on witchcraft was Mastering Witchcraft by Paul Hewson, which that shouldn't be your first book on witchcraft. Right? Like, there are other books to start with that would fill in some holes. But she was represented there as the goddess of the witches as well. And then, of course, being raised with a Christian environment, the goddess of witches is Diana in the Bible. So this is, it was no surprise that her and I kept on meeting each other in the shadows, But as I was turning of age and, becoming a teenager and hormones and all this stuff, that's when the isolation got really, really hard, just because I was in rural Ohio and there just was nobody, let alone queer people. The word queer was something that was used to hurt me. It wasn't used as something that I was empowered by. So, one summer I started practicing with these two boys that were in my neighborhood. I was actually the guy who got them to practice the craft. And it was actually 14 years ago next month, I want to say. We were outside playing and invoking the goddess, and I had invoked Diana. One of my friends had invoked Hecate, and the other one had invoked Bridget. And, we're new, we don't know what we're doing. So it's like 2 a.m, we're on this big campfire, the stars are out, it's a beautiful, beautiful night. And we're trying to raise energy for the goddess. And the theory was that, because the fire was dying out, that if the goddess showed up, the fire would go poof, and it would come back to existence, because that's witchcraft. That's proof, right? And so we did it. We chanted and we chanted and we chanted. And almost simultaneously, we all just kind of opened our eyes and just kind of slapped our hips and just, released, like, this is bullshit. And instantly the fire went poof. They took off running, and I was like a baby deer, just kind of holding on to things going, oh, did this really just happen? This just really happened. And I'm sure, I'm sure a log shifted, or, something really simple and natural but magical had happened. And that was it for me. I knew it. I stripped off my clothes. I ran into a field. I was under the full moon, and I said, I'm yours. Take me. Let's do this. Let's game on. I have no doubt. I've never felt this before. I have no doubt this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I spent a lot of time after that in just research mode. And Diana was a companion, spirit for me for a long time. I hadn't devoted myself in a way that I ended up later on devoting myself. And then I started studying all these traditions as I got older. And I would go from Wicca to the Deanist tradition. And Diana was always there. Like, even when she wasn't there on the outside, when she got in, she was always there. And so I just reserved myself to the understanding that every corner I turn, she's going to be there. And I can't deny that. I can't get away from this anymore. And why would I? Because she's pretty badass. Yeah. And so when I was 19, I was a dancer. I was an exotic dancer. And I was young and cute and furry, and I could move, and all the boys loved me. And I got into a lifestyle that wasn't necessarily the healthiest for a 19-year-old who had daddy issues. And so I ended up in some situations after that where I'd met people who, I thought were genuinely nice, but really hadn't turned out to be. And this led to me experiencing sexual assault. And that changed everything, And so I was in a place where I felt like my spirituality had failed me, because witches who are strong don't get raped. Men don't get raped. These things just don't happen to us. And so I was in this really dark place, and, trying to figure out what was next and what to do with life. And that's actually when I feel like the Diana that I know now came to me in my lifetime. And I'm just crying and just feeling sore for myself and wondering, what's going on. And, again, I come from this place where, 50% of my graduating class is either dead or they're in jail for meth-related crimes. And so like there was no options where I could come from. And she reminded me of that as I was there on the ground, 3 weeks later after the event had happened, feeling really bad for myself and feeling very weak and very vulnerable. And I had this incredible message come through, and it was just this very clear, I'm not going to save you. You have to save yourself. I'm not here to fix this. I'm here to show you how to fix it yourself. And it really became clear that there were not going to be any handouts. There weren't going to be any we'll take care of this for you. We're the divine. No, it was, you are divine and you have to remember that. You are divine. You have to learn how to be that. And that is where, that's the big pivot point in my life. That's where everything changed and shifted, was that night. And I realized, just like we talk about the Holy Spirit in Christianity, it's this beautiful thing, but to me, that's the witch power. But we don't need a personal Lord and Savior to go find it. It's inside of you. That's your job, right? And so that was the message of Diana, and that quickly turned into a lot of lessons about sovereignty and the notion of the soul being a very sacred thing, obviously, but the responsibility that
you just froze.
We're all intermingling, and we're all going through crazy things. And the sovereignty includes awareness and spiritually connected to your domain.
Hey, Devin.
Yeah.
We just, I want to get that last part again because you're breaking up a bit.
Oh, no.
And so we hit the next 10-minute mark. So the producers, guys, do your thing, cut that out, and we're going to pick back up in a minute. It might be helpful. We'll go ahead and have you start chatting a bit, and if you're still breaking up, log out and come back in.
Okay. Yeah, that's no problem.
Yeah, you seem to be there fine now. Okay, so the point where let's pick back up from the point where you were talking about the sacredness of the soul. But there's a responsibility. So I'll welcome us back, and I'll pick it back up. And if you guys are watching the video version of this, I think we'll just go ahead and leave it in so you know how much hard work goes into these guys that do podcasts, because that's a whole other realm of brilliance and production. So Devin, before the video started messing up, you were talking about that sovereignty of the soul, and that with that sovereignty, there's sort of that noblesse oblige, to whom much is given, much is required. You want to go ahead and pick back up from there?
Yeah, I mean, it's that idea that, so in order for us to truly be sovereign, we have to acknowledge that other people are sovereign as well. So it's kind of like, if you're a country, and this is what I tell my clients all the time, if you are the queen of a country and you are at war with your neighbors, then that your sovereignty and their sovereignty is clashing, right? And what we have to be able to do is realize that the whole world is a bunch of countries fighting and trying to work it out, right? And so in order for us to truly be sovereign, we have to acknowledge and identify the sovereignty in other people. And the minute that we lose that, we lose our own sovereignty, because you can't have one without the other. You can't, it doesn't work like that. And if we think of our stories and mythologies, when that does happen, that's when everything goes wrong. That's when, that's when we get Hamlet, and that's when we get all those really dark, horrible Oedipus Rex things. And, so it's all there. And I think that it's really just about acknowledging, hey, we're in this together. And I'm definitely one of those, I hate the term, harm none, but take no crap. I'm kind of one of those people. I just prefer to be spiky all the time so that people don't even want to come around. But it's that idea of no, come on, you're a human being. You've got this thing going on. Your life is hard, just like my life is hard. Can't we just acknowledge that so that we're all on the same page here? And it really changes the power dynamic between you and everybody else when you realize that if you expect yourself to be treated as a god, or you expect yourself to live as a god, you must treat everybody else like that. And that's so hard.
Absolutely. My next t-shirt is going to say, in a world full of Donald Trumps, be a Margot. because I'm a, I'm a Magician's fan. I don't know how many people would get it, but that's exactly what
I got it. I would wear it. Yes, please make this happen. Yeah.
So what, tell us, as we've got about 10 minutes left, what's next for Devin Hunter? New books dropping, classes, tours with your partners. I know that you guys just got back or did a sort of a long distance class on the East Coast. So anything else? What's coming up?
We've got huge things coming up. This is probably the busiest I've ever been, and I love it. I love it. I'm a creative person, so it's great. But I was able to procure modernwitch.com, and this is after 10 years of having the show and doing the magazine and these other things, and that's a huge deal. And so I'm fulfilling this goal of mine that I set for myself about 13 years ago to have a kind of online hub where all of the witchy things on the internet can be found, and there's lists of things. And so Modern Witch has always been a life and style for witches kind of experience, and we're going to really be doing that with the website. So that'll be launching in just a week or two. It's really exciting. We've got a Pathos blog that'll be out. I've been avoiding blogging because I blogged on all these other platforms, and it's a very interesting thing to do, and it's hard to do consistently. And so we have a staff of writers, and everyone's getting on. They're all authors. They're all published, people who really care about what's going on. And so that's really exciting. And so that's all happening right now. And then I have my fourth book, which will be out in the fall, which is called Modern Witch: Spells, Rituals, and Recipes. And it's a pictorial spell book formulary. And so it's like, it breaks the step-by-step of each spell down. This is what it should look like when you're carving this candle out. This is what this thing is, how the thing should burn, and so you can see all of those things and get a little bit more of an idea of what it is that we're trying to be doing. And that's my first spell book. So it's trippy because the other books have been very, very heady, and they've been very kind of directed towards more intermediate to advanced witches. And this is something that I think everybody can pick up and get something out of. And it's great. So there's a lot of really cool trippy. There's no book on the planet that exists like this. This book is brand new, and it's very, very different from what you're going to see. So I'm just really honored and proud to be able to work on it. And it's all the photos. I took all the photos. Like it's been a big thing. So that's coming out. So that's what we're doing right now. I'm working on the shop and taking care of Modern Witch and my tradition, and then the stuff on the side. So busy guy. But if anybody's interested, you can just check out devinhunter.net. And I'm all over the internet and at Mr. Devin Hunter on tweets, Instagram, Facebook. And you can find me. And I love to chat to people, and I love our queer community. So,
well, having said that, at the end of this broadcast, if you guys just stick around and watch to the very end, I'm going to go ahead and put as much of Devin's contact information as I've got up there on the screen for you. I really do encourage you to connect in any of the places that you feel led, because those sound like some amazing, amazing things. I think I heard a little bit, I don't know whether it was from Chaz or I heard from Matt or something, a little bit about the backstory of that journey to getting that domain back, getting ownership of it. So congratulations on that. And maybe we'll be able to have you back on when the book drops. That would be exciting. And just going to put this out there, not wanting to put you on the spot by any means, but the idea was coming to me as I was listening to you talk that another important issue that we can try and cover from the Brew's perspective is talking about the sacred relationships and how those don't have to follow a binary format. If that's something that that you guys would love to be on, we'd love to have all three of you in here for that. It's something that's personally relevant for me, but relevant to so many of the folks I talk to out there who are kind of afraid to let that be a part of their whole selves. So again, thank you so much, Devin Hunter. You can go to devinhunter.net, correct?
.net, yep.
And then we'll put all the rest of the contact information up on the screen at the end of the show. Thanks to each of you who are watching this broadcast and sharing it with your friends on Facebook and YouTube, Twitter. In our next segment, we're going to be talking to CJ Burke about his magically infused essential oil soaps and other products he makes, as well as the journey of what you do when life seems to throw you a curve or two from the perspective of the queer witch. So we're looking forward to that interview. That's coming up. I'm going to be recording that this week. And again, thanks for liking, sharing, and tweeting about our show. Thank you to Devin Hunter. Thank you to each of you who are watching. And as we say at the end of every show, we encourage you to come back to the moment, to be truly present to who you really are. That might be uncomfortable at times, but that point, that present moment is the only point of power you'll ever find. So if coming into power is important to you, you've got to return there. You've got to return there with gratitude as well. Because if you can't be grateful for what you have right now in this moment, then I promise you, you could get tons more, and it's not going to make any difference. And always remember, my friends, the best is yet to come. We'll talk to you soon.